The United States has long been called the world's greatest melting pot, but with such a large percentage of the population having roots outside of the country, one can't help but wonder, what does it mean to be truly American? I spoke with a couple who would argue your patriotism is not measured by the green of your grass or the horsepower of your truck, but by your dedication to the great American pastime.
I'm Dinah Lichtay.
And I'm Andrew Lichtay.
Where are you from again?
New York, Long Island.
Yeah, New York, New York.
And I think it's safe to say that you are some of the top Nets fans in the game. How did that start?
It started with me in about 1977 when my dad used to get tickets from the trucking company where he worked, and we'd go to opening day watching the games. Growing up in New York, there was two teams, and I wasn't going to be a Yankee fan.
Yeah.
So.
There's only one good team, so
Yeah.
that's the way it is.
Your dad was not from the States.
My parents were not, no.
Where are they from?
They both originally from the Ukraine, and they actually fled during World War II when the Germans were invading their town. You know, Mom would tell stories of how she'd be in school or things that, you know, the kids would make fun of her and everything. But when they became older, my friends used to say they had an accent. I didn't recognize it, but there was no barriers for them.
Your mom has a Long Island accent.
Yeah, well, we all do. When everyone was coming over on boats, there was no planes, and they'd go through Ellis Island, or afterwards when they closed Ellis Island. But there were sections in New York, so there was the Ukrainian section, the Chinese section, the Italian section. That's how New York was built.
Where are your parents from?
Southern China. My dad was much older. He was born in 1893. They went back to China, and then they married younger women and brought them here. So my mom was about 40 years or so younger than my dad, and she came in the 50s. With Chinese people, you know, obviously they look we look Chinese, and there's assumptions, but yes, the culture is there, the food is there, you must you know, go to school and do well in school, and that part is there. But there's also a part where I grew up in a way where the U.S. is our home. There was no talk about one day we'll go back and we're going back to China. Nobody wanted to go back to China, you know. And I've just found that very interesting because I'm very patriotic. My dad was patriotic, yet he was very Chinese in his culture.
You know, there were rules back then like there are now, and you know, they came over because that we were allowed to come over at a certain time and had to have whatever papers filled out. And as with my mother and her father, he could only bring 3 people over, but he had 4, so he only brought 2. Worked hard for a year to get enough money to bring the other 2 over. And, you know, the country is built on immigrants, and it always will be.
In the past, let's say the Chinese American history, there were times when the law was very unfair. There were quotas, and the Chinese people were not allowed to become citizens and come here. Yet, through my mom's immigrant experience and her bringing over her sisters, we had to wait 20 years before her sisters' families were allowed, you know.
Anything about your siblings?
Oh,
Oh, no.
I have 3 brothers, 2 older, 1 younger. You know, we grew up with the Ukrainian tradition. It's interesting as you get older. Dinah and I still follow traditions. Let's just say some of the other brothers don't. I'm sure that's the same across other families with that. But it's important to keep the traditions and the what's the word I'm looking for?
Culture.
The culture.
Yeah.
Going. You know, I have a unique name, Lichtay. It's not Smith or Jones, so it's not hard to find the other relatives. But it's interesting to see how everyone, you know, how they've come over and how they've built themselves with Detroit, Buffalo, you know, Canada, some of them, and you know, went about their dreams that way. They all started from one place in the Ukraine, but they've built their dreams where they were.
Mm-hmm.
Have you combined the Ukrainian and Chinese cultures? traditions?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Do you think much of the culture was lost in the integration to America, or no?
I think most of the culture was lost in the home country
Yeah, I think.
because of,
yeah.
sorry,
Sorry, go
because
ahead.
of, you know, Hitler invading and burning records. And I mean, my grandfather saw his brother shot by the Nazis in his hometown. I mean, there was lots of things that were lost during the wars. I mean, the same can be, you know, on the Chinese
Yeah.
and China side. I think if you go back a generation or two, a lot of them kept as much as they can. It's not lost, but it's pretty hard to find some of it.
When I've met people from China, I've noticed that some of the stuff we kept, they've moved on. They don't do that stuff anymore. That's old-fashioned, yet we try to keep some of that culture. Here, of course, then the culture changes. You're American and you're Chinese, you know, and now I'm Ukrainian, you know.
When I was in 9th grade and my social studies teacher asked everyone, where are you from? And I said I was Ukrainian. And no one knew what the Ukraine
Yeah.
was back
Who?
then. You know, what's that?
Where?
Where's that? I mean, now everyone does, I hope. But it's interesting because he brought it to perspective, and he pointed me out because he didn't know where I was born. But you're classifying yourself as, you know, as something else, where I don't know if people do that now. I mean, I would think now generations are saying, where I would say I'm a Ukrainian American, people probably say they're an American Ukrainian now. You know, people say I'm Italian, people say, okay, he goes, but you're all born in America.